All right, folks. I do this annual retreat every year for our investor group. We'll go to some cool location. And since I'm lazy, we do it in Hawaii a lot. So we take everybody down to Waikiki for a couple of days. The flow is actually, I think, super ideal for busy people, right? I did another retreat like this. And then also I've seen people do family retreats like this, but basic framework, everybody flies in the day and meets up for an evening thing. So you have a night there to check in, a full day on Saturday, and then a full second night, and then some kind of recap on Sunday, some event most of the day, but then you're out and you're done. You're back to normal life. So this is the flow that followed over the last several years. And I can look back at my last 2024 and the highlights of my year were a couple of these very different retreats, different groups, but similar format, right? You come in, couple nights, you settle in, you're out of your element and you get out. But Paul missed us this time. He's a staple there, but I just thought we'd chit chat of some takeaways and some common themes that I think people struggle with in our community, myself included. I got a few of these, but the first one I hear it a lot for now into my 40s, and most of our people are into their maybe even mid 60s, some of our members. This theme of maybe being a little bit lonely, spending too much time in our 20s and 30s and 40s chasing and not really interacting with the friends that we once had in college and prior to that were once so important. But then kids and family came in and time just disappeared. Is that something that you've gone through, Paul? And maybe if you have any traction on that one?
I think it's really common that when people get older, it's a number of factors, but I think as we get older, we become more particular in what we want and type of people we want to hang out with.
And then something
So,
happens and we get pissed off with each other and we don't hang out with them. And then it's just a game of attrition too. And that
yeah,
happens.
exactly. Or if you spend most of your time at a job, if your social circle is revolved around your job or occupation, and you leave that, then you're stuck in no man's land. You need to start over and make new friends. I think another common scenario is for our listeners who have kids. You got little ones running around, and so it becomes more difficult to hang out with your single friends, right? They don't want to be around a bunch of kids. You have to tailor your activities for the little ones, and so then you end up trying to hang out with other parents who have kids, but now you've introduced a whole host of other variables. The kids have to like each other enough, and the parents also have to like each other enough. If both of those don't happen, you're probably not going to be hanging out like all that much, right? It's not going to be very
Yeah.
long lived.
We're at the stage where like the parent, we do these birthday parties for our kid, and
Mm.
then the parents don't really talk. It's just awkward. We're just all there. It's just funny.
Yeah.
Laugh at it.
Yeah, and for a lot of us, as we get older, like we just forget how to have fun, right? Like we wish we could transport it back in time and be as carefree as our kids who can just make friends so easily. And be like, hey, you want to play? Sure. So yeah, absolutely. I go to these parties too, and yeah, there's just a bunch of adults standing around awkwardly trying to make some small talk. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where, again, these are just takeaways and common themes, not only from our event, but I'm in some other business groups too. Yeah, it's not very often you have a married couple where both make the same amount of income and some more job roles arise. I'm not saying that it's gender roles or anything like that. There's always like a primary and secondary, whether it's the guy or girl, doesn't matter. But it always comes to a point where one is very focused on career or business. And in a way, just like investing, you have to concentrate and undiversify in a way to get any type of greater progress there. You have to focus in a way,
Mm.
but that leaves one spouse to focus more on the social parts of the house, which can be a good team, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Maybe the social spouse is out there having a great time on their own and making a lot of friends, a lot of lunch dates, but the poor workhorse
Yeah.
is caught there without that.
Yeah, for sure. It could also be the other way around where the more social person is thinking, like, what have I given up? Did I give up my ambition? Did I give up my chance to make like a certain contribution or to build something? So yeah, I've seen it go both ways.
Yeah, and even like the busy professional who's out there doing biz dev for this work trip, that work trip is meeting a lot of new people where the other is stuck at home,
Yeah.
very isolated too.
And which makes it tough because I think at the end of the day, most people need human connection. And so
Yeah.
one person's gone all the time, working late hours and business trips, oftentimes leads to strain, if not an erosion of the bond that initially brought the two partners together.
You said it. It certainly is an issue, and I think it definitely not should be ignored. So one tip I've picked up, and this has been verified by multiple people. So I'm in some other groups. I usually ask the older guys, like guys in their mid 40s, mid 50s. Some of these guys, I hear them because we do like personal updates. They're gonna go visit their friends in Vegas, and I ask them like, "Hey, you always go on trips with your buddies and leave your wife and kids at home?" And then they're like, "You know what? I forgot it, but yeah, we never did that when we were in our 30s because we were broke and we just couldn't do that." So that was one thing, like consistency thing I've seen is like at some point to throw back those types of 2 or 3 day trips, or where you go on your own, and also give your spouse the time to do that too. Do you guys do that? Your guys' kids are still young too, right? Like where it's hard.
Yeah, right now they're 11 and 8, soon to be 9. It does get easier as they become more independent for traveling, but right now the issue is they just have so many extracurricular activities and logistics, like managing the schedule, but also trying to carve out time between the wife and I to go connect. And because I think that's really important is to have not just date nights, but date weekends, which is where you can just go and just reconnect. I think
Yeah.
that's super super important.
I certainly agree with that. I'm just thinking in terms of if guys have their guy friends and the spouse has the spouse friends, you gotta water the garden, right? You can't just come back to it 20 years later too.
Oh, for sure. I think it takes real intentionality. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if these friends live somewhere far away. It's already tough enough to meet up with them if they live locally. So it almost takes, I think, from my experience, either one person booking a plane ticket to go visit the other person, or you both schedule some sort of time and you meet up somewhere in the middle. It takes a lot of intentionality, and you gotta be more motivated because time becomes more and more precious, it seems, like, with everything going on. It's almost like you gotta look at your relationships and figure out, okay, which ones are my top relationships, which ones are worth making this strong effort to go out and really make an effort to reconnect and, like you said, water the garden.
I don't have very many tips. I'm just aware of these issues. But the other thing that kind of came up was the common line of, yeah, it should be nice to hang out with my friend Paul, but he never calls me. So nothing ever happens. Right. Common thing that comes up a lot. But I don't know. Anything in this realm that you've done?
I know for myself, and I think this is true for probably a lot of guys too. Probably heard it too, is that a lot of men tend to bond over activities. So if you can schedule something where you're doing some sort of experience together, create these,
Golf or fishing or
yeah, or some sort of adventure. It could even be like a simple hike or something, or going for a run. Some sort of experience where it's more than just like meeting up in person and chatting, but actually doing an activity together. I personally find that really nice. Yeah, and I think, yeah, I think a lot of, not to overgeneralize, but I think a lot of guys, I think, find that to be the case.
I will share 2 other tips along these lines, and I hope I don't overstep my confidentiality here, but I'm sure they would like to share these best practices too. The first is when the kids were younger or in sports, they would make it a point to create an informal forum or board advisor with the circle of parents and to really formalize it. And when the kids left high school or left that sporting activity, that the group of parents would consciously get together. So I think it's an example of a group of friends that originated later in life. So you meet in the 40s and maybe it has legs to carry on a decade or a few decades. They, like you said, the event thing made me think about it. They live near an area where they have a hiking path where it just so happens that crescendos higher in the beginning and it's easier at the end, the second 2/3. So they've developed a routine where, like a ritual where in the beginning it's really hard. So that's where you unload like here are the shitty things that are happening, right? Kind of the thorn in the rose where you talk
Mhm.
about the thorn first. And then when you get to the top, it's like, all right, that's nobody's keeping a time in here, but just with the normal pace of the hike, then it comes to a point where like, all right, what are we going to do about it? What do we
Mhm.
issue process or just be thankful for things? So I thought that
Yeah.
was in a way serendipitous ritual that came up. I think people can apply.
I think it's a good metaphor.
Yeah, these days just smoke a cigar and start drinking beers at the first hole and
Yeah.
just keep it going throughout. Right? Empty
Yeah.
nose.
Yeah.
No, nothing like that. But I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. That's cool. It's a little bit of shared adversity can be a really good thing. Overcoming a challenge together, I think that helps to create a stronger bond, a stronger memory, something that you can talk about. Right.
If you think of designing your life, like living next to a place where something like that is a walk away, or buying a boat, creating those types of experiences that you can conjure up when people
Yeah.
come over. So other takeaway two, this year we had a lot of older people. I want to say that. So there's you were here in the beginning stages of this where we had a lot of younger, high income, not wealthy yet guys. And boy, would they party, right? They didn't have very much money to invest, but they sure liked the party and had a lot of energy. But what I've noticed is three definite age groups developing. And most of people have families, I would say 90% of people, but the younger group would be my cohort, the people with developing families, kids under the ages of 5, 6.
Mm.
And then the one where the kids are gone and they're exiting businesses, retiring. You're this weird character where you're finding what you're going to do when you grow up in a way, financially independent, and you get younger kids. I think there's some people like that too, but generally you have these three stages in life surrounding around family, but also like money too, especially if you've earned it on your own. That was my takeaway, just taking a survey where people were at.
That's interesting. There were more of the older cohort.
And one of the takeaways of that is you're going to do what you're going to do and it's going to come anyway. Like the time when you just call it quits or you try and find what you really wanted to do with your time if you didn't have to trade time for money.
Did you find that of the older folks who went to the retreat that perhaps they're looking for something, right? They're looking for to develop new relationships, right? Maybe something that was a bit lacking in previous years when
Yeah, I
they
think,
were
yeah,
working.
it's the zest of life is people,
Yeah.
especially new people. And I think you mentioned it earlier, right? As you start to age, 40s, 50, you start to get set in your ways. The neuroplasticity kind of wanes. I think what's cool about our group is everybody's into the whole getting out of their comfort zone, personal development. So it's a cool group to be around. And I think that's where if you can be an older aged person, but if you have the right operating system, you will come across as a very youthful, sharp person. And I think when you get to that age, your cohorts begin to fall off. When we were in college, everybody seemed cool to hang out with. There's just a lot more people.
And I imagine that it's also nice for these older folks with more life experience to be in an environment where we're able to contribute, not only grow their social circle, but also contribute, right? And we've talked about in other podcasts the importance of growth and contribution, right? Which are basic human needs, but they usually come much later after you've fulfilled like the more primal human needs. Yeah. So I think retreats like this where you get to meet other people similar in many ways, but also with enough interesting differences, I think for a lot of people, I can see why that's appealing.
I think the last takeaway or maybe tip to share with listeners, we played around with dinner dates this time. So in the middle night, we assign people to different reservations across town. And so like I had to be careful when you have multiple open table reservations on your account because they'll cancel it. So I had to use all these phones and all my burner numbers and stuff like that to keep the reservations. But I've done this before as I've been a participant in this, but there is a magic number to the number of people at these dinners for sure. Like you don't want 3, and then just in case one person doesn't show up, you want a 4th person there just so you don't have 3 because 3 is just too little. I think it doesn't get enough eclectic people at a table. But when you start to get more than 6, it gets crowded. And what starts to happen is, if people have noticed it, but like you start to have 2 conversations going
Mhm.
on a table. These 3 people will be talking and these 2 people will be talking. One person will be in the middle, kind of out, or like trying to talk both.
Yeah.
Of course, when you structure meetings or
Yeah.
social things, but the 4 to 6 people is this magic number where everybody's in there. And what I normally do is I usually feed it with some type of table topic that they're instructed to just, if it organically happens, it happens great.
Yeah.
But once the food order goes, and then some kind of share or takeaway, and then that gives enough time for that share takeaway to go around the circle, and then it naturally dissipates, of course,
Yeah.
and then the food comes in 10 minutes or so after
Yeah, yeah.
that. So,
It's helpful to have some topics prepared ahead of time in case everyone is a bit introverted and doesn't know how to start. So it's good to have
yeah.
some topics teed up and yeah, get things going.
But I think most people are introverts who come. So it really brings the introverts into a comfortable place. But I think that's what's the cool thing about a retreat. So whether it's a business thing like how we do, or with your buddies, like the days go by and you settle in the first night, you do some bonding thing or just hanging out the Saturday. And then by the evening time, certainly the next day, that time does magic to like making people comfortable. And you're going down, you're peeling back the layers of the onion, or you should be in conversation, and you get to that point.
More than one interaction, right? See people again the next day, then yeah, I think it just lends itself naturally to deeper connections and deeper conversations going on.
Certainly with strangers, although that can make things easier though, right? Because it's like a taxi cab confessional. I'm not going to see this
Yeah,
guy
exactly.
Cole again. I don't care what he thinks of me.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I mean, that's
It's
what,
a few thousand miles away. Like,
if I made an ass of myself in front of Cole, I'm not going to see this guy. He's not going to hang out with me again.
Exactly.
Not going to tell anybody I know. But that's where it's harder with family and friends and spouses.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other like interesting takeaway you've done from past years?
Yeah, I think just having gone to a number of these, I think it's always cool when you keep in touch with folks afterwards. And actually had a conversation with one of the attendees at the retreats who I saw in the past, and yeah, she was hoping to see me there, but I couldn't make it this year, unfortunately. But we still scheduled a Zoom meeting and had a really nice catch-up call. Always really cool to have these relationships continue to flourish long after the retreat.
Do you do Zoom calls with your buddies or phone, or what's your method?
Yeah, Zoom or FaceTime.
Or you just schedule like a trip there with families?
If possible, I think it's always better to meet in person. In a couple of weeks, we have a couple of friends visiting from New York. We're going to go to Whistler and ski, spend about a week together. Yeah, we always like to do little excursions and little adventures with our friends. And I think that's always much better than, to me, it's much better than just scheduling phone calls. I think there's something about just having experiences together. I think that's very nurturing to a friendship.
Yeah, it certainly is ideal. I'll say that I like the impromptu phone call. In a way, it's selfish, but I do it when I'm free, when I'm driving. And I get it. I'm just like, oh, you sound busy, Paul. All right, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
But if you can catch people when they're not doing anything at all,
Yeah.
probably just messing around on their phone. Because the hardest part is like catching people when they're scheduled. It's just impossible. Especially if you have family things going on during the weekends. You can't schedule a 30-minute call with your buddy. That's just, I don't know what kind of spouses you guys have, but I can't do that. But it's just, I tend to do that from time to time. If I got time, I'll just dial and be okay getting rejected.
Yeah, and the fact that you tried, that's very meaningful. It shows the other person that you're thinking with them, and yeah, I see no downside to that whatsoever. Yeah, and then if you get lucky and you both can talk, then yeah, I've had conversations like that where you go on for a really long time and we just had a great chat.
Sometimes people like to plan things, and I get it. I like to plan everything, but it's just it's not going to happen, or it can be the barrier to even starting it.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think that those are some takeaways this year. I'm sure next year we'll have some more. I always look at it and what are some things or habits I can implement throughout the year. Hopefully you guys got some ideas cooking. If you had some of these same issues that we discussed here, just know you're not alone. Pretty much everybody's got the same problems. If you guys want us to talk about a specific issue or problem that comes up, let us know, and we'll catch you guys on the next show.